Hey everyone, welcome to Retire with Style and another brand spanking new edition of the RISA in action. And we're bringing in Doug Oosterhart from Life Point Planning today, right, Wade?
That's right. Yeah, we're excited to have a Michigan native who's been all over the country, and we're happy to welcome Doug to the show for our special Friday series looking at the RISA. Welcome to the
Thank
show,
you,
Doug.
guys. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No. I think it's awesome, man. And Wade, just a quick after I started the episode saying, "Hey, I'll try to keep quiet here," but Doug had the best story of using the RISA before it was the RISA, and your book had a lot to do with it, Wade. You know how you have a free link in your book, to
I
take
sure
it.
do.
All
Oh,
right.
okay. I think I know this
Yeah.
is
He would send folks to take it, from your book, and then he would discuss it with them afterwards. Like that's the greatest hack. I
yeah,
thought when Doug told me that
hacking the
story,
RISA.
I was like, oh, this guy's like us. We need him on. We need him on this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I was reading the guidebook. Then I'm like, wait a second, this is in print. So it's a static link, which means I guess anyone could use that. So sorry. But
No,
No,
yeah,
no,
I had clients do it, and that was before you could even print it or like download it in a PDF. So I had to like create a Loom video of here's how you actually get the results to
ah,
me.
mm-hmm,
So,
uh-huh.
but it
Yeah,
was
they have to
good.
copy and paste the output from the screen, huh? So you're kind of
Yeah.
walking them through that.
Yeah. But it was good.
hey, whatever it takes. Whatever it
Yep.
takes.
That's a great hack. And that's still today. I mean, I guess advisors can do
Yeah.
that, get those,
Yeah,
get
they'll
access
just
to
get
the
our
recent.
nurturing sequence, but hey,
Right.
Yeah.
all's fair,
Yeah,
right?
the danger is that book link does ask you if you want to be on our mailing list as well.
Correct. Yep. I just tried to tee him up like, hey, you're going to have to sign up for their email list, but we can still work together.
Yeah, we're unsubscribed.
So,
Don't worry. After a week,
right.
you won't want to read anything else.
Yeah,
Fair.
it's not. You can opt out as well. It's not. It just asks you if you want to sign up, and you may have to unclick the box. But
Yep.
as long as you do that, you're not on the mailing list.
Definitely.
But wow, yeah, that I've heard that story, but I didn't specifically link it with you, Doug. So
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
You're a longtime user.
Yeah. No,
And now
it's
you
been,
do have a formal
yeah.
license to use.
Yeah. Now I can send the link, which is good. So,
Yeah, you've got complete control with
yep.
your own account. Well, and so we'll let the listeners know a little bit about your background. I mentioned you're a Michigan native. You're a graduate of Michigan State University. I grew up more in the Detroit area. That was,
Yeah.
at least where I lived, more of a University of Michigan vibe. But
Yeah. Absolutely.
tell us a little bit about your journey from Michigan State to where you are today.
Yeah. So, started as a 20-year-old in the industry. I'm now going to be 31 this year. So I'm kind of at a weird point where I'm not like practicing on clients, if you will. And I'm also not a, 65-year-old advisor that's been around forever. So I'm kind of just in that little sweet spot. But yeah, started as a junior at Michigan State at a large insurance company, and built the practice over 5 years there to 200-ish households, just organically pounding the pavement, and then decided to start my own RIA about 5-ish years ago. And now I work with about 75 households. And I've been through all different fee models, right? I've been commission only, fee based, fee only, and now I'm back to fee based, which I think McLean is too, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I think we're on the same page there, just in terms of, our preference for business model. And this isn't about, what business model is the best, but truly having the ability to serve clients in any solution, right? And I think that's what's really powerful about the RISA is, and Wade, you've identified multiple viable options. So now what we're trying to do is say, okay, what option fits any specific situation? And it's not always a spreadsheet answer, right? I've seen people comment on some of your Kits' posts, like, with just crazy stuff. And I love that you take the high road with your responses, but just crazy stuff about just their specific philosophy that they put every single client into. So the RISA is so great that it helps identify specific solutions for specific people. So, but yeah, I mean, now we're just we're still kind of in growth mode. I hired an assistant based on Alex's advice of trajectory of the business. He's just like, okay, let's, your next step is to hire an assistant. I'm like, you know what, let's do it. So, just to build the infrastructure to, have more scale. So, but
no,
yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
And I think, for folks, we can do it a little early. In my conversations with Doug, even though he's 30, 31, whatever, wise beyond his years, I think, you could kind of, I've been around long enough. I'm 50. I got into this probably when I was, I don't know, right out of grad at 29, 30. I don't remember exactly. And you can begin to, you have an intuitive sense of who's going to be a good advisor, who's not, just by the vibe they give. And I got to say, Doug, for someone your age and the way you've been, your trajectory and the like, I can see you being like extremely successful, like an outlier type of successful. And that's why I was like, let's bring him in, because it'd be kind of cool. No, seriously, it'd be kind of cool.
I
like 10 years later, 15 years later, say, hey, Doug, check this out.
Yeah.
Or, remember way back when? No,
Yeah.
I honestly feel that way, but who knows, right?
Yeah.
We'll see. I get that vibe, so
I appreciate it. My line the line I use is, and I won't be able to use this forever, but my line right now is, don't you want someone in their prime when you're in retirement? So then they're just like,
right.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, that's a real issue. If the advisor is the same age as the client, they may not be around for that full.
Well, the funny thing is, remember, I got in like I was probably early 30s, right? Early 30, like 30, 31. And I remember going to conferences thinking, hey, look at me, I'm the young whippersnapper. And now I'm like, man, I'm like average. I'm like in the middle here,
Yep. Definitely.
So slowly,
Middle-aged and crazy.
Yeah, right.
See, we need more of those. Those from Wade.
He's full of them. Trust me.
He plays it close to the vest.
Dude, we were in Stanford last week, walking down the campus, and he's just zinging them.
Yep.
But he's got a public persona.
Absolutely.
Right,
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Well, dude, for within the book, is the book the first impression where you saw, hey, what is this RISA thing about?
Yeah, for the RISA specifically. Yeah. So the book is really, I don't know the best way to describe it. It's really meaty. Like, I don't know, there's just a lot of stuff inside of it, when I'm like, okay, let's take this chapter by chapter. And, but yeah, the book was the first time that I, was first thinking about, wait a second, like, this is not a classic risk tolerance questionnaire, right? Like, and that's, I think, one of the easiest, right. Yeah. And that's like one of the easiest ways to describe what the RISA is to say what it's not, right? It's not it's not a risk tolerance questionnaire where you're going to be like, oh, here's your portfolio that you should be in based on your age. And clients and prospects alike enjoy that part, right? And when I was first sending it out, it was a lot longer, but now it's shorter
version.
Exactly.
Full length.
Yeah, full length one.
You got the director's cut.
Right. Exactly. So now it's a little bit shorter, but the whole thought about it is just, it's different, and it's not anything that we've seen before, right? The goal is to, I think at least, the goal is to get to know your client as best as you possibly can, but also specifically know how they think and how they make decisions. So if you can do that and like get into their brain about, okay, how do they make a decision, right? It's not the spreadsheet answer for this specific client. It might be something else. But as long as we know that all of the solutions are viable, we can determine what fits best for them in their specific scenario. Or we can also weed out people that might not be a good fit, or that might be a good fit to be a DIYer, which saves everyone time, which is great. So, but yeah, to answer your question, that was a long answer to a short question, but yeah, I mean, the book was the first time. And then now I sent you guys that email about the funded ratio, which that's another really cool exercise that you can do with people, is kind of take that and then mirror back in the RISA. Like, okay, we know your funded ratio looks good. Now, how do we go about implementation of that income plan in the future? So
Yeah, because the fundraiser really does a good job of disentangling the essential expenses from the discretionary and how funded
Hmm.
are you in each component. And if
Yep.
you're obviously in the income protection bracket, then like you need a laser focus on making sure the essentials are funded
Sure.
with contractual income. That to the degree that it's economically feasible, etc.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on there.
I guess
Yeah,
one. Go ahead, Wade. Sorry.
I was just that we really, as you know from the retirement planning guidebook, I really became enamored with the funded ratio, and that's really the 1-2 punch of what's your style, and then do you need to change anything from your current course of action? And that's where the funded ratio is really looking at: is there a gap you're looking to fill, and if so, how are you most comfortable filling it? So I'm glad to hear also that you kind of like that funded ratio approach. It's an alternative to, and it doesn't replace, it's just you can do them both, but Monte Carlo based financial planning tools that report success rates, they're
Yep.
two different, coming at the same problem from opposite ends, but ultimately getting similar answers.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's an and, not an or, and it also depends again on the client's learning style. So especially you get a spouse that might be more technical and a spouse that might be more high level. We can say, okay, great. Here's two different ways we can approach it. We're going to get you the same solution, but in terms of your visualization and learning, we might approach it from a different angle, which I think is helpful. And
Yeah.
then also, go ahead. Sorry, Alex.
No. I don't know how much to take it into now. A discussion on Monte Carlo versus
Yes.
funded ratio.
Sorry.
No. I wanted to get into it, so I'm kind of catching myself. We have previous episodes. Knock yourself out. I don't know what number they are, but ultimately, my 2 cents is Monte Carlo is more of a binary yes or no. Then gives
Hmm.
you the cumulative percentage of thousands of plants, whereas funded ratio I like better because it's kind of a percent completion thing, and
Yeah.
I think that's much more useful for somebody, especially in the early stages of deciding what kind of plan they want to get into. I'll leave that at that before
Yeah.
getting into it. And obviously, Wade agrees. Correct, Wade?
Sure, and also just the funded ratio lets you really focus on what rate of return you're assuming, whereas that gets completely obscured in the Monte Carlo.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could take that a step further, right? And we could draw it back to the RISA. Like a lot of advisors out there, as we know, focus specifically on that total return, whether it's 4% rule or whatever, withdrawal strategy. And the funded ratio, we can be like, okay, you hit your ratio, or it's a completed ratio at X amount of return. So therefore, we don't necessarily need to hit home runs. We don't necessarily need to do X, Y, and Z. We can really construct something that you'll be able to live with for the next X number of years and not have to change it.
No, man, you're absolutely right. It it just helps the conversation, and that's why we think it's the good 1-2 punch. I don't know. I mean, if you're doing Monte Carlo too, there's a sense of it's just always going to be total return, and
Hmm.
so using that as a segue, does Arisa help from a client communication? Well, I hope the answer is yes, but who knows, right? And if it didn't, that's fine too. I just didn't want to lead the witness the way I was asking it. So let me rephrase that. How has Arisa affected the way your client communication cadence has gone when presenting strategies, etc.?
Yeah, great question. So it's we know, right? Annuity can sometimes be a four-letter word, and one thing, like a potential piece of criticism for the RISA, is that it is, or it can be, relatively annuity heavy, or give the perception that it is, and that's just not the case, right? Like you can you there's I have case studies of just clients in all different segments and quadrants of it, where it's like, look, we're just going to implement whatever works. And I was telling Wade before this, like I use a lot of buffered ETFs in my
Yeah.
practice, and uh, that could be a solution for a certain segment of people. I use when we're talking like a bucketing strategy, I have like a timeline matching visual, like a one pager that I'll show clients, like, because they'll pull up their account on the custodian and it'll just be a hodgepodge of different holdings. Well, that doesn't really paint the correct picture. So I'll use a one pager timeline matching visual with people, like, look, we're doing this on purpose and with intention. So the RISA's basically transformed I guess the visual nature, you could call it the reporting, account reporting, if you will. But like, okay, hey, we're going to construct this strategy and we're going to share it with you and without the financial jargon. However, we know that the back end work that Wade has done on this is all really robust. So that gives us a lot of confidence with the solutions that we would recommend.
I would add to this. This is an and as well.
Sure.
And we were just in a meeting earlier today, Wade and myself, with DPL,
Mm.
and the angle, and I think you said this. What the RISA is just doing is describing characteristics of solutions,
Yeah.
right? Without giving them a label. The issue is that, look, 75% of the people want solutions that have a role for contractual income.
Yep.
And so it's not that the RISA is pushing annuities. It's just the RISA is acknowledging their existence as a credible retirement income strategy. And so if someone's coming from the worldview where it's total return or nothing else, then even if annuities come up 5% of the time, they think we're sandbagging.
Right.
And the reality is, it's the reverse is true.
Exactly.
You're sandbagging total return for everyone when that doesn't conform to the reality of how people want to source retirement income. You're just like wedging it in.
Right.
And so that's kind of my response. Wade?
Yeah, and Doug, you mentioned earlier about the comments on Michael Kitste's blog, and that was a few minutes ago at this point, but there was the one I think you might be referencing, which someone wrote that the job of the financial advisor is to convince their clients to be 100% stocks at all times in retirement. And right, if that's your belief, then you do think that the RISA is unnecessarily bringing annuities into the conversation. But the reality is, you really have to have an extreme viewpoint to believe. I mean, 100% stocks is right for everyone.
And Wade, that guy thinks the job of a client is to pay quarterly in advance, 1%, no matter what.
Yeah, with no refunds. But that's really important.
Tell me that's,
You're right, exactly. But also, like, as a client, how do you differentiate, right? Because there's so many advisors that are so polarizing in terms of total return, or on the other side that might be annuity only. Like, oh my gosh, doomsday, doomsday, doomsday. You have to put everyone in annuity. So the RISA, it helps us identify where they're at, maybe on that spectrum, to then guide to have the best solution for them. So, and that's important for a client to also identify, like, okay, we're going to go interview 3 advisors. Okay, well, what are the advisors' biases to different retirement income solutions, which is important. Something that I think, Alex, you were just talking about. I used to frame it as, like, if we were to design your ideal asset for retirement, what characteristics would it have? Because then that could help us identify. And it's the same thing, like, oh, do you have any pensions? And the client would say, no, I wish. It's like, oh, okay. Do you have any annuities? They're like, no, I hate them. It's like, well, wait a second. So that's, it's a lot of it has to do with framing, but the RISA definitely helps frame correctly.
No, that's great. And what is your sweet spot for who you use the RISA for? Do you use it for specifically only for clients that are transitioning into retirement, for clients that are a little younger, that you can kind of let them know, we don't need to do it now, but just so you know, this could be something in the future that we may have to prepare for clients that have already been retired, as a sort of reality sanity check? Just putting it out there. What do you see within your practice?
Yeah, I mean, primarily it is focused on retirees or people on the cusp of retirement. But I do have, so I have a multi-generational client where I took pieces from the RISA for the client's son, and just to really get to know them, right? If we can get to know our clients the best, we can help them determine what solutions work the best for them. And the son was like, or I paused him. I think we were talking about, it might have even been like disability insurance or something. He's a physician. And he just stopped me and he's like, dang, you really know how I make decisions and how I think about things. I'm like, that's the point. Like, that's what we're trying to do. So in terms of like demographic wise, it's tough, right? Yeah. I mean, primarily it is for retirees, but there can be use cases for people that are in accumulation as well.
And how do the retirees react? Some of the things we've heard from advisors in the communication, which is similar. You were kind of hinting at it earlier, and I kind of moved away from it, but I think it bears repeating. Some advisors have told us the RISA kind of permissions the ability to talk about any solution because it's not coming from the advisor. It's actually being sourced by the individuals themselves, and that helps sort of create a buy-in, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like to say like it goes beyond quadrants, right? It really, what we're doing is blending, the academic aspect with the personal aspect. So we can say, okay, great. We have free reign to discuss the best possible solution for you, because generally speaking, everything in finance just has trade-offs, right? Like really what we're trying to do is say, okay, what do you prioritize, Mr. or Mrs. Client, in your financial plan? And then what trade-offs are you willing to accept to get you from retirement at the start of retirement to the end of retirement? So it's just yeah, I mean, I guess it does. It really gives us the ability to speak openly and speak freely on both personal and things with a dollar sign.
Yeah, no. And Wade, did you notice he used the word trade-off specifically? That's something that Wade always likes to. He does it very eloquently. Yeah, he'll say that it takes the best of psychology because it's a personality driven, and the best of economics by identifying the trade-offs that they're making from retirement income planning. He uses that phrase a lot, and look at that,
I think
Wade.
that one came more
There
from
you go.
You're the one talking about the best of psychology.
I mean,
yeah,
so like the client is an expert in their life, and we're an expert in financial stuff, if you will, right? Retirement planning, tax planning, whatever. So what we're trying to do is say, okay, let's take your expertise of your own life and our expertise of the financial world, and how can we blend them together to create the best solution? I mean, that's the easiest way to put it.
That's a nice way to put it. I haven't heard it like that before. That's hard to do after so many of these.
Fair.
Yeah. No, that's pretty good. Any particular use cases that you like to talk about where you were able to flex your muscles on this?
Yeah, I mean, I have people all over. I just said go beyond the quadrants, but I have people in every quadrant. I have a couple that I've just written down. The most common one, I feel like maybe a question you guys get would be, what if one spouse has one profile and another one has a different one? I have a client where one spouse is just income protection, very, very scared of ups and downs, any volatility at all. And then the other client is not full total return, but maybe something like a guardrails approach or something.
Yeah.
And we're just, part of it is me. Like I have to be really good at explaining things to both of them and their learning style and really work at that. But really, we have to think about, okay, all the solutions are viable. What is comfortable for both of you? And the solution for them was, he had a little bit of a military pension, and then he already had an income annuity, or he had an annuity that he annuitized. And so that satisfies the wife's want and need for income protection. And then we kind of blend them. So like we have a couple years of income that is already, whether it's bonds, cash, whatever, short-term bonds, cash. But then the rest we can just say, okay, here's the timeline for these funds. You're not going to access them for X number of years. So therefore, we're okay with some volatility. And I'll circle back with the wife and just say, look, like these specific dollars, they will go up and down, but we have another portion of your dollars that aren't going to. And she's like, okay, that checks the box for me then, which is good.
Yeah, that's really powerful because you're quantifying, or you're showing that it's not just the market that she's being forced to depend upon, because here are the protected income, reliable income sources that you have. And so just being able to frame that conversation with her in that manner, whereas there's still some investing going on, but her her entire future lifestyle is not dependent on the success of those investments. That
Right.
was persuasive. That
Yeah. Yep. And they are retiring January of next year. So we'll set all of that into motion, and we've kind of already pre-prepped it, which is nice.
This is a bit of a straw man that I'm going to present, granted, right? But for consumers listening in, I think if they walk into like the normal fee only advisor that does assets under management, I think what you see if somebody is ultimately very conservative versus somebody is very aggressive is they'll split the difference on the allocation
Mm-hmm.
and call it a day. And what
Yep.
I mean by that is, if you notice, what Doug did is he's bringing in characteristics of the different strategies into something that's blended that accommodates the couple's preferences in a manner that reconciles their sensitivities. Whereas what happens a lot in practice right now, to the detriment of the consumer, is if this couple went to the traditional, I'm a fiduciary, I'm fee only, and it's assets under management because if you do well, I do well, and that kind of BS. The reality is that they'll think, okay, this husband's coming in at 100% equity, 0% fixed income, and we'll put the other spouse, the wife, at 40% equity, 60% fixed income. So if we split the difference, that's what is that, 70-30? Three up, three down.
Right.
It meets in the middle, and no one's happy. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that there's always this presumption that the investments carry the entirety of the load. And if you do that, you're not recognizing the significant risks that are present in retirement, which are manifested by her and him, in the like. And so I think it allows you to kind of find that blend. Other folks that we found doing the RISA, they have a separate strategy for the lady and a separate strategy for the man, in that spouse kind of couple. I think it depends, on how you can split the pie up. Sometimes it's easier, like what you said, just blend it. And you're satisfying both parties in that mix.
Yeah, I think it's important. We'll call that, like, I think of that as the spectrum of the word safety amongst advisors.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there are advisors out there that are like, what do you mean? The market's safe. Well, yeah, it might be if your time horizon is 30 years, right? Your risk, if you will, lessens over a longer time horizon, but you can't just put clients into one strategy and adjust their allocation based on that. I mean, 2022 might be it's the most recent example where a balanced portfolio is probably, what, Wade, you can probably attest to this, was it the worst performance ever of a balanced portfolio?
Well, bonds got hit 20%, right?
Yeah.
They both stocks and bonds are looking at some, depending on which fund you have, but somewhere in the ballpark of 20% losses.
Yeah. So that's just really important, like, to identify as a consumer, again, like what the advisor's biases are, because again, this isn't supposed to be a podcast about like what business model is the best, but you're correct, right? Like there are, generally if you go to this is why I left fee only world to go back to fee based. It's like, look, there aren't solutions if you're fee only that you're even thinking about most of the time. And I hate to generalize, but that's just what I saw was like, look, being fee only, you do not have all of the solutions available to you.
We should probably define these terms. We're using them a lot today, and I don't know if we've ever formally defined them on an episode.
This may be
before.
Our next arc. I've got some ideas around. But Doug, why don't you? Well, you're on a roll.
Yep.
What's fee only?
Yeah, what do you mean by fee only and by fee based?
Yeah, so again, with the theme of like what it's not versus what it is. So fee only can encompass a percentage of assets model. It can encompass a flat fee model where that can be an ongoing flat fee, whether it's paid monthly, quarterly, annually, et cetera. Or it could be an hourly fee or like a project-based fee. All of that fits under the category, at least of the CFP board, a Certified Financial Planner board, of being fee only. And basically that just means that the advisor does not accept any mutual fund commissions or insurance commissions, etc. Fee based is all of what I've just said, but then also adds on, insurance commissions, or I guess technically you could do mutual fund commissions under that as well. Now, I don't do that, but
I think that's like a dinosaur at this point.
yeah, I mean, I don't see the reason why anyone would own a commission based mutual fund, but whatever.
Oh, it still exists, I think.
Yeah. I see them. We just get clients out of them. But I mean, so interestingly, what I found is that the clients don't care. I had a client where they had a non-qualified annuity, just a joint non-qualified annuity with some gains on it. And they also had a huge position in just like VTI, right? A total market index fund. And we're like, okay, let's tax-free exchange this into a new annuity that might have a floor, or, has, and it's just like, okay. And they're like, great, how do you get paid on this? And I'm like, it's a commission. And they're just like, cool. They at the end of the day, most clients don't care about how the advisor gets paid. They might want to know what the advisor gets paid, or what the business model is, but at the end of the day, they really just want their problem solved. Yeah, and if you're just upfront with the client about it, generally they're like, okay, I get that.
I'm in agreement with you. I think ultimately, look, to the degree they care or not, I don't know, because I don't formally ask every single person, and you don't
Fair.
know, you don't have the negatives, right? The people that didn't take you on as a client, maybe that was an issue and they never told you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think you're in the right direction. Directionally, you're correct. And for me, it's more about transparency, because you can hand over my heart, I could argue credibly every fee model.
Yep.
You can, right? And so the issue is not that. The issue is transparency and aligning incentives and being completely open book with the client about that, because there's use cases where any one of those is advantageous, and there's use cases where any one of those may not be. It's just how it is. I feel sorry for the consumer because we're in the thick of it and we know it, and so it's one of those things. But it's just government regulations, when an annuity is effectively a contract, and so that just has different dynamics, as opposed to just putting a trade in the floor of the exchange. If you're doing AUM, but that's neither here nor there. But the larger point, and this was us. This is the RISA for us. I'll do my own RISA in action for us. Wade's writing all these things, right? And all of a sudden, we come to the realization McLean was a fee only, waving the flag of NAPFA, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Firm up, I don't know when, let's just say 5 years ago, right? And we realized that, no, you know what? These other things are valid. We should be putting them in our portfolio. And we're willing to say, okay, fine, we'll just refer it out. If someone needed an annuity, we'll refer that business out to an insurance person that does it, that kind of thing. But after a while, it became quite cumbersome. And we're an extension of whoever we refer that person out to. So if that person decides not to call that person back or this or that, it looks poorly on us.
Yep.
And so after a while, we were like, listen, just from a business standpoint, it's an easier workflow to put that all inside in one house. And no one pushed back. None of our clients cared. If anything, it's just easier. And the fact that you're open to everything, it's just an easier relationship dynamic, but transparency is the key there. I don't, whenever anyone tells you how honest they are, the tighter you grab your wallet. That's kind of how I feel when people start throwing terms like that around.
Definitely. And for me, it might not have even been annuities. It was also with long-term care insurance, right? That industry is crazy.
I didn't even think like that.
Yeah, so it's just like, I want to bring the best solution. Like, I just referred out a long-term care policy to Northwestern Mutual because they have a great long-term care product that independent agents can't even access. So it's just like, okay, like if this is what's best for the client, I really don't care, because if I, so.
I know. And so you can see how the RISA is kind of a natural play for this. If you're really coming at things from, there are many credible strategies. Heck, it's taught in the schools.
Yeah.
There's the flooring, there's time segmentation, there's total return. And you can split the flooring up into two. But if you really believe in those, which are taught, then why would you all of a sudden restrict yourself from 3 out of the 4 solutions?
Right. And I think to your point, it's just, it's tougher for the consumer, right? I feel bad for the consumer because now it's like, okay, they have to worry about how the advisor gets paid. Then also, what strategy is the advisor going to pitch them? Is it always total return? Is it always income protection?
Well,
How can they
consumers not even aware of
decipher?
that. Consumers
Correct.
not even aware of that. And this is where the RISA comes in. And
Mhm.
maybe you
Yep.
can tie this to your experience. Wade, can you talk about the matching problem that exists? And maybe Doug can point out how that has happened in his firm and he was able to kind of, right size it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of come up in the context, but it's just like I always use the example of you turn on your car radio, you tune into the AM stations, probably more so than FM, and you start to listen to the commercials. You hear the commercial that I'm a fiduciary advisor. I'm fee only, so I only charge my clients, and when they do well, I do well. And ultimately, if that's some sort of high percentage, 1 to 1.5% annual fee on the investments, and ultimately all that advisor is doing is putting them into some sort of model portfolio just with a basic asset allocation, figuring out the stock bond mix, but beyond that, choosing a few different funds. That's a very expensive way to invest, and that's not necessarily providing any value. Now, of course, some fee-only advisors do offer more financial planning services. But even though this is really promoted in the consumer medias, it's the nice marketing message, fee only, the interests are aligned. Well, at the end of the day, there are a lot of financial products that may not fit into that model. And also that model tends to only focus on managing investments. It may not really serve the client well, but then they flip to another station and it's all about how a fixed index annuity is like, solves every problem under the sun with principal protection, upside growth opportunities, lifetime income. And if that's the right, I mean, if your style fits with that, absolutely, there are good fixed index only annuities out there. But it's always whoever is advocating for a particular strategy, they're acting as though that's the only viable option that everyone should be using. And that's where the RISA and the advisor who's able to maneuver between these different strategies, I really feel is best positioned to ultimately serve the most clients. And that's, Doug, as you've realized, as we've realized, a fee-based approach that allows you that flexibility is ultimately, I think, going to be the type of advisory firm that is going to help the most people in the long term.
Yeah, that is very well put. And that's why I'm all in on it as well. Like that was the point where I just realized, like, look, we have to offer everything. And it's not like we never take it from a standpoint of, oh, this advisor's bad, right? There's good advisors at bad firms and bad advisors at good firms. We never want to discount anyone. You just think, okay, they're doing the best with what they have, or maybe doing the best with what they know. But, my job is to say, okay, how can we offer the client every solution no matter what? And I do a lot of flat fees too, so yeah. It's like it's just like, okay, cool, like you have it doesn't matter, the fee's going to stay the same regardless of your asset level. Now what we can do is make recommendations based on how you think and what might fit best for you regardless of any type of business model. But
dude, I think that's great. Doug, just because I want to make sure people hear about you, how can folks find out about LifePoint?
Yeah, so lifepointplanning.com is the website, and then I'm on Twitter as well, Doug LPP, and then also to retirewithlpp.com. That's another one as well that I have. But yeah, lifepointplanning.com, that shares a lot about the firm and me and what we're doing, which is good.
Hey, Wade.
And that's all one word, no hyphens, just
correct.
lifepointplanning.com.
You
Wade,
got it.
Remind me to buy the URL. Don't retire with life.
Hey. That my goal is to make sure that would have the lowest traffic of all time.
Should put it like an April Fools or something and
Yeah.
send it to you, like just giving you the URL.
Yeah.
Hey, something that this is the and wait, there's more piece to this because you had said DIYers. Part of
Yeah.
the RISA is, and I don't think we've discussed this much. We've discussed the RISA as how you want to source retirement income, the main
Yeah.
matrix. But something in that battery that we have is the implementation personas, where we identify if you're a delegator, collaborator, validator, do-it-yourselfer, and we do it with self-efficacy and advisor usefulness. Is that something you use within your practice? And if so, what are some stories that you have behind that?
Yeah, great question. I try to, this might be good or bad, I don't know. I try to identify that on initial calls with people before they've taken it and then have them do it to see if I'm right, because it is so important. I had a client, or not a client, a prospect that was total return and kind of on the cusp of validator or DIYer. And the interesting part was that their opinion of their self-efficacy was low, meaning like they don't feel confident that they can put together a solution, but yet they still don't want to pay for an advisor to help with it. So I thought that was just, I was very, very polite, right? I sent them a follow-up video like, hey, we might not be a great fit. Here's some resources to help, and here's where the RISA is even from. But at this time, and they had mentioned to me too, like, yeah, we interview advisors every few years just to kind of see. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. Like, well, here, let's do this RISA. And to be honest with you, like, that is really great feedback for me and them. Like, okay, if you're not going to hire an advisor, what do you need to do it yourself, right? And that comes down. I tell all clients of all quadrants, if you will, this, like, look, to do it yourself, you need the time, the desire, and the ability. And with enough time, you can probably accumulate the ability to research enough to potentially do it yourself correctly. But you also have to have the desire to do it. And if you don't have one or more of those, time, desire, ability to create and implement your plan, then that might mean that you need some professional help to do so. And go ahead. Sorry, Alex.
I agree with you, but there's an additional piece that I think do-it-yourselfers lack. That's not to say you can't do it yourself, but they have to realize what they're walking into. And there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. And a do-it-yourselfer is a sample size of one. Whereas, an advisor has, you just said you have 200 families or something like that, right? And so you can identify intuitively two people that are very similar. And you could say, no, but this is a better strategy for this person. And this is a better strategy for that person. Because at some point you can intuit what's a better fit. Beyond just the knowledge, you have the wisdom to know that, okay, in this particular case, this is the way they need to go. In this particular case, yes, I get that, a claiming strategy like this works 95% of the time, but for you, I don't recommend it because I know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's the one hang up that's there. Trust me, I'm not trying to, we have it ourselves. If someone's a self-directed investor, we just send them to the membership site and educate yourself. And if they want to raise their hands, fine. But we're not like soliciting it because it's a game you're not going to win, right? But that's the only caveat emptor that I do have for a do-it-yourselfer is that they're a sample size of one, and that's an issue.
And everyone makes mistakes, but when you're doing it yourself, you make the mistake for yourself, whereas the professional help already knows what kind of mistakes get made and can walk you through that so that you don't have to experience the inevitable mistakes that happen.
At the very least, a self-directed person should be a validator every once in a while just to hey, let me get another pair of eyes on this just in case. But it's funny how many, and you know what I was surprised too? How candidly people answer that. Like, you're an advisor, you're giving someone a questionnaire asking them, hey, how good do you think I could be for you?
You're right. Yeah.
And they're like,
Yeah. My favorite ones are close friends and family. I'm like, no, just be honest. Like, like we, you know, but yeah, I mean, the DIY thing too, just, and I don't mean to, belabor the point, but
fine.
the what versus the how, right? You can know what you're supposed to do, but the implementation and the how to do it is a whole nother thing. It's how to rebalance a portfolio. Like, okay, are you doing it with a spreadsheet? Are you, it's just the what versus the how is a huge thing as well.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm more just of the opinion that it's almost like, when you're a teenager and your parents tell you don't do this because such and such, and you do it anyways because you got to find out for yourself. It's
Yep.
almost that. And
Yeah.
hopefully you just don't you don't get into trouble.
Right. Yeah.
Before you figure out the lesson, if you will. But no, but you do use the implementation matrices. Do you use it for your funnels? Do you use specific funnels? If they're this is how I'm going to approach them. If they're a validator, this is how I'm going to approach them.
Good question. Yes. I mean, generally speaking, validators and do-it-yourselfers just aren't a great fit for long-term planning. The good news is, back to our business model discussion, they can find someone that will meet them for a few hours and, fill that need. But yeah, I mean, I use it with, every time I'm sending a RISA, I'm doing that. Like that piece is super important too, because again, back to, I have to know the client the best to then recommend the best solutions for them. That is a huge component. Are they a collaborator? Are they a delegator? Yeah. It's just like with collaborators, I might, send an extra email like, hey, we are going to rebalance your portfolio. I don't know why I keep going back to that example, but we're going to rebalance your portfolio and here's what we're doing and here's why. Where a delegator, I might just say, hey, we rebalanced your portfolio this quarter. And they're just like, okay, cool. Yeah. So it helps with communication.
It affects the cadence, especially in a discovery meeting. You
Yep.
don't want to like overwhelm somebody, or you don't want to underwhelm somebody. You want to get them at the right balance, if you will. But
right.
No, I agree. I'm looking at Wade.
Well, we probably are kind of running up on our time.
Perfect.
Here, so let me just mention, we do have the RISA Masterclass coming up August 28th, 29th. And the first two primary days, there'll be CFP and other CE credit available for those sessions starting at 12 noon each day. We'll have the link in the show notes for anyone who wants to learn more about the RISA. And Doug, just give our listeners another chance to learn how they can find you on the internet if they would like to do so from the consumer side.
Yeah, the easiest place is lifepointplanning.com. Just to reiterate, so yeah, started in the business 10 years ago, built to 200 families, then started from scratch again. So now I work with like 75 households. And the easiest way to connect is just do lifepointplanning.com. I have a Start Here tab, and I've been doing a little bit of a promo where we've been doing a one-page plan or like a one-page visualization for people, just to kind of share with them, okay, here's some low-hanging fruit items that we can discuss, and then if it blossoms into anything else, that's fine. If not, that's okay too. So that's the easiest way, lifepointplanning.com.
Great.
Hey, Doug. Yeah. Sorry, Wade. Go ahead.
No, thanks for joining us, and thanks everyone for listening. And before I take us home, did you have a last thought there, Alex? I think you were ruminating on something.
Just to say thank you, and I'll say it on Doug's behalf. I can't express how impressed I've been with Doug during all of our interactions, before this podcast. So I definitely check that page out.
Thank you both.
No,
cool.
Thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Doug.